Fifth graders, you all are loaded with so many stories. In this video, I'm going to show you a way to find some of those stories using a technique called photo album, which is exactly what it sounds like. So to do this, usually what I would do is I would take a whole bunch of photos that I have and I might stick them in my writing workshop notebook or a notebook of some kind. Okay, so I'm going to start with that. So in my notebook, here's some examples of some of the pictures that I might have. And these are just pictures of things that have happened. Some are really important, some maybe not so much. So if you look at the top one up here, this is a picture of my oldest son, Aiden. And here he is, he's playing baseball. This is from, I think this is up in Plover, Wisconsin, one summer. And this was a summer we were traveling quite a bit for a whole lot of baseball. And there were so many neat stories. He had just a great time, just making friends and seeing different places. And one of the things that sticks out to me is sometimes even just an object in a picture can tell all kinds of stories. This bat is one of several bats that he's had over the years, and each bat has its own story. This one here is the first bat that he ever used to hit a home run on a regular size field, which makes it really, really special for him. He's hit home runs with other ones, but this one in particular was really important to him. This picture down here is of two older people that I just saw walking into McDonald's one day, or one evening. And this was when I went for a bike ride with my sons. And it wasn't uncommon in one of these summers that we would take a bike ride down to McDonald's. We get an ice cream cone cheap for like $1. We just sit outside and just hang out. And this particular night, this old couple came and they were just holding hands and just going at their own little pace, just taking their own time. And it was just absolutely sweet, the love and caring there. And then when they got to the door, the gentleman, he went and he opened it up and he put his hand on the lady's back and just gently helped her through the door. And it was really sweet. I just thought it was one of those really sweet moments. Up in the top right, this is a picture of me with some of my friends. This is Mr. Pauls, who is a fifth grade teacher over at Cromrie. This is Mr. Jones, who used to be a Spanish teacher at Cromrie. And then this is a good friend of ours, Tom Wilson, who is also known as Officer Wilson. He does a lot of work with the Middleton Police Department and does a fantastic job there. And this is a day that we went to a Badger football game, all four of us. We actually ran into Mrs. Coolidge that particular day, who often works on Badger games. Mrs. Coolidge is a teacher over at Cromrie. And that particular day, we stopped at all kinds of different places and found different friends and just met up with them. It was a really good time. Down here, this is a picture from a baseball tournament when we went to Sandusky, Ohio. And one of the things we ended up doing one night is we had a team dinner out at a restaurant. And for whatever reason, I don't know why, but players started having arm wrestling contests. And before you know it, all the parents, all the players, everybody, all the siblings are all around just watching. These are two of the coaches that got involved. And we eventually had not just players, but coaches. We had some of the parents. One of the best battles of the night was two of the moms who went at it. They probably got the most cheering of anybody. But these two coaches, the one on the left here, this is Coach Hellenbrand, who's actually the Middleton Police Chief as well. He is a great guy. And then this here is Coach Cody Blue. Now, I'm going to tell you another story about Cody Blue here in just a moment. But in this particular picture, these two are going at it. You've got one who's a police chief, one who's a former Marine, and they're just going at it, and everybody's just cheering and yelling and having a blast. That particular night was all about team bonding, and it was probably one of our favorite memories of that entire trip, even though we weren't even playing baseball. It was just everybody getting together and having a great time. So the other story I want to tell you about Coach Blue here is that on that trip, we had a few guys who went off and they went go-karting. Well, on one of the go-kart trips, his go-kart spun around, and when it spun around, it turned so that the front was facing towards the other cars. Well, another car went up on his and bashed into his hand, and he ended up actually losing a tip of his finger that night. So that particular night, he and a couple of the coaches and players had to go to the emergency room while they worked on that. The rest of us are waiting back at the hotel for him to come back, and it was a crazy night. It was it was one of a couple days where we had people just getting hurt and injured. It was rough. So that makes this picture even that much more memorable to see everybody happy and smiling. So now there's two other pictures that I'm going to tell you a little bit more about. One of them is this person over here, and his name is Keegan. He's a former student of mine. He's now graduated. And this other one up here is my youngest son, Marek, and you can see he's touching a bird here. So I'm going to start with Keegan. Keegan was a student of mine many years ago. And those of you who do get to know me will find out that I am a little bit of a jokester. I like to be a little bit more animated and have some fun. Well, there was one year we were doing a math lesson on fractions, decimals, and percents. And me being a sports guy, to me, fractions, decimals, percents just calls out baseball. So one day in front of class, I am standing up there. I took a meter stick, and I'm standing up there trying to pretend I'm Ryan Braun, just to sort of get everything going. Okay. And I pretended I stood up there. I looked just like him. I did everything that Ryan Braun from the Milwaukee Brewers does. And then I went and I swung. I didn't think I was near anybody. Well, it turns out I was a lot closer than I thought. And I actually whacked Keegan right upside the head. It was one of those crazy moments where everybody gets silent when it happens. And at the same moment, everybody goes, "Oh!" And I hit him. Keegan put his hand up on his face and he looked at me a bit in surprise. I felt awful. I felt horrible. Here I had just whacked one of my fourth graders. And I thought, uh-oh, I'm in big trouble. So I tried to do the responsible thing. I went and I told our principal. And admittedly, our principal giggled a little bit. He thought it was funny. And he said, okay, here's what you're going to do. Send him to the nurse's office and then contact home and just let them know what happened. So I sent her to the nurse's office. She giggled and laughed, said, you're fine. Go back to class. I contacted home. And I'd known Keegan's mom for a while and his dad. And they're both very nice people. I contacted them, left them a message, and then I waited. Because I knew in my message I had taken responsibility for it. I said, please let me know if there's anything I can do. I am so, so sorry. In my mind, I had it running through my head. Oh my goodness, I'm going to get sued. I'm going to lose my job. The poor kid is probably hurt. I hope I didn't break anything. And then I got a response back from the family. And I just sat there, just patiently waiting. Oh my goodness, what are they going to say? I am in so much trouble. And then that's when the response came. Mr. Conahan, thanks for letting us know. And thanks for being such a fun and engaging teacher. We just love the way that you keep things fun and engaging. No worries. He's fine. Keep up the good work. And then I had one of those moments of, did that just happen the way I thought it just happened? I guess it did. It's one of my favorite stories. It's a story I tell every year. And there is a follow-up to that story. This picture was not from that day, but here is Keegan. I was marching in the Good Neighbor Fest parade. In that particular year, all the staff, we had signs. My sign had a stick on it. So as I was walking in the parade, Keegan's mom saw me, Mr. Conahan, Mr. Conahan. So I walked over, flipped my sign around to the stick side, and just pretended to whack him over the head. Of course, somebody happened to take a picture of me the exact moment that I was doing it. It became a little bit of a tradition. Every time I saw Keegan in the parade, he'd stand up and let me pretend to bop him in the head. Now Keegan's so much taller than me, he has to bend over for me to be able to do it. I love that story. The only other story I'm going to tell you is Marek and the story of Fuzzy. Marek and I had gone downtown one night, and when we came back into our parking ramp, sitting on a bike rack that I had attached to my car was this mourning dove. And Marek and I were like, that's kind of interesting. Well, okay. No big deal. Didn't think anything of it. We got in the car, started to back out, started to drive through the parking ramp to leave. And as we got to the end of the ramp, we realized, hey, the bird is still on the bike rack. Oh, well. We figured once we started driving a little bit faster, the bird would fly off. Well, we started driving down University Avenue towards where we live in Middleton. And the bird just stayed on there. Never moved. Just was completely content on the back of the car. At one point, the bird went and turned backwards. So as all the breeze would hit the bird, it would blow up its feathers and it got really fuzzy, really looking. And that's when Marek said, Dad, he's really fuzzy. I think I'm going to call him Fuzzy. And at that moment, the bird's name became Fuzzy. Well, we got all the way home. Fuzzy never left. Fuzzy stayed right on there. And when we parked, Mark said, Dad, we need to park under a tree in case Fuzzy needs to fly up there and make a nest. So I said, okay, we'll do that. So we parked under a tree and we went out, we took a picture. Usually wouldn't endorse touching an animal, especially if it's sitting there because it's, could be sick and ill. But we just did a quick little touch in a picture, and then we headed inside for the night. The next morning, we woke up. I went and I checked on Marek. He woke up and he said, "Is Fuzzy still there?" So we both ran to the window and we looked outside. We couldn't quite tell. So we went downstairs, and sure enough, Fuzzy was still there sitting on the car. Well, here was the interesting thing then. So as it turned out, that particular day, I was going to go do a video promotion at Pope Farm Conservancy. I was going to help out their friends group. So I've got a picture of Fuzzy right here, and then here is Fuzzy at Pope Farm Conservancy, still on my car. Well, we went there, we did the video shoot, and as we came back, Fuzzy had moved a little bit. Fuzzy was no longer sitting on the bike rack, but Fuzzy started to crawl up to the top of the car. Mark looked at Fuzzy and said, "Fuzzy, where are you going? What are you doing?" Fuzzy looked away. Fuzzy looked back at us, which is the moment that I took this picture. Fuzzy looked away again, started flapping his wings, and took off flying. Fuzzy started heading back in the direction of Madison, but at that moment, two other birds came flying right in towards the Conservancy, heading right back towards where the rock wall is, and Fuzzy turned right around with them and joined them. The last time we saw Fuzzy, he was flying into the Conservancy. So now anytime we see a mourning dove, especially if it's at Pope Farm, we always say, "Hey Fuzzy, how you doing? How's the family?" Folks, as you go through your photos and your memories and videos. Those are great things to put in your notebooks because they are loaded with stories. Sometimes they're really small, like a bat. Sometimes they're really incredible stories or really funny stories. Go ahead and give it a try. See if it helps you generate some ideas. And when it does, go ahead and write them down in your notebook or wherever it is that you're going to write your story ideas. Have fun.